Okay, it's the start time, but we've got people still coming in, so I'm gonna talk quickly for a few moments. Bob, do you mind keeping it on the first slide for us for a sec? Thank you. Um, Great. So, hi everyone. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Richard Campbell. I'm the Director of Marketing at NetNatives, and I help marketing leaders in higher education drive student recruitment and solve enrolment challenges. I wanted to welcome everyone and thank you for taking the time to join this webinar. Each year, we're blown away by the interest and support for the National Clearing Survey, which is manifested by the hundreds who attend this virtual event and our face-to-face presentations a few weeks ago exclusively for our research partners and clients. So just to remind you, the event is being recorded. So if you do have audio or connectivity issues, please don't worry. We'll be sending you the recording. So if you have any colleagues who can't attend or make the event, they can watch at a later time. And also, please do join in. We have polls throughout and encourage questions and conversations in the chat function. So let's start now by saying hello to each other. I know a few of you are letting us know what institution you're dialing in from, and we'll get started. So the National Clearing Survey was launched to better understand the journey that students undertake throughout the clearing process. The survey is a major national initiative and is the only one of its kind that analyses the clearing journey from the point of view of the student. But for some introductions, you already know who I am, but I'll let my colleagues introduce themselves.
Hi everyone, I'm Barbs. I'm Global Research Lead at NetNatives. I've got quite a few years experience, both university side and with NetNatives in an insights capacity, and I'm here to share the key findings from this year's survey.
Good morning, everyone. My name's Conor Ward. I'm the advertising director here at NetNatives. My goal at NetNatives has been aligning our planning and buying functions amidst the turbulence of advertising measurement.
Thanks, guys. And I'm sure you've all heard of us, but just as a brief intro, NetNatives is a full-service, data-driven marketing agency focused exclusively on higher education. So for more than 15 years, we've worked in close collaborations with colleges and institutions to determine the most effective ways to emphasize their brand and meet their enrolment goals. Student marketing with transformative potential. What do we mean by that? So it's all down to understanding you, what your goals and business objectives are, and your in-house capabilities, your structures and vision, and then building a team around you so that you're able to focus on what you do best, which is transforming student lives through education. We're here for you to lean on or learn from. So here to provide you marketing support when you need it, but also to help upskill and train your teams as well. And so on to the next slide and why we're all here. The National Clearing Survey was launched to better understand the journey that students undertake through the clearing process. The survey is a major national initiative and is the only one of its kind that analyses the clearing journey from the point of view of the student. The National Clearing Survey exists to look at the national picture and enable decision makers, marketers, admissions advisors, and senior leaders from higher education gauge a more detailed understanding of students' actions prior to, during, and post A-level results day. The report looks at students' main influences and motivations when choosing a place, their journey through clearing, and their motivators when finalising a place. And by understanding these factors and who your audiences are, this report equips you with a greater market understanding and provides you with the intelligence to optimise your strategies from the insights garnered from over 226,000 pieces of data. This annual survey has become an invaluable tool for understanding the higher education landscape in the UK. And today we're really excited to be celebrating a significant milestone, the 10th anniversary of the National Clearing Survey, which makes me feel very old. As you can see, it's come in many shapes and sizes and delivered online through a pandemic and in person like we did at the end of 2024. But what hasn't changed is that over this past decade, this invaluable tool has revolutionized the way we understand student choice and behavior. So by providing clear, rich, data-driven insights, the National Clearing Survey has empowered institutions to make informed decisions and optimize their recruitment strategies through clearing while making the digital journey better for students. And today we're going to be running through what we saw in Clearing 2024 and why that matters now. The main event, the Clearing Student Revealed, and the insights and findings from this report. Some ideas for actions to put in place to improve your clearing recruitment for 2025, and make sure that you go away knowing where to go for a deeper dive into this year's results. So before we look to the future, let's look at last year's clearing cycle. And the national picture saw A-level results day uh, mark a mixed landscape for UK universities. While some institutions experienced a surge in applications and acceptances, others faced challenges filling their courses. The number of students applying to university continued to rise, intensifying competition for places. And this trend was particularly evident in certain subject areas and courses, leading to increased demand for some programmes. While the top 5 subject areas did not change between 23 and 24, subjects allied to medicine, business and management, social sciences, design and creative and performing arts and computing, some subjects fared better than others. And subject areas with the biggest increases in acceptances between 23 and 24 were engineering and technology, veterinary sciences and law, and computing grew, with those with the biggest decreases were combined and general studies, psychology, education and teaching, and history. And many institutions reported successful outcomes. However, the impact of clearing varied across different regions of the UK. Some areas experienced more significant changes than others, and London in particular saw a 4-figure increase in clearing acceptances, reflecting regional differences in student demographics and preferences. And direct clearing reached its highest level since 2020, indicating that a growing number of students who did not receive their first choice offers and opted to apply directly through this process. And this growth was particularly notable with an increase in domestic applicants of 13% year on year, but there was also international students increasing 7% year on year. Higher tariff institutions demonstrated strong performances, attracting many students with high A-level grades on the day itself. And in contrast, lower and medium tariff institutions faced challenges filling those courses. However, we did see that medium tariff institutions did do well through the long-tailed clearing, particularly if they'd invested in brand awareness early in the cycle. And this trend underscores the importance of tariff strategies, having the campaigns live early, and the need for universities to differentiate themselves in this competitive market. Lower post-results recruitment particularly affected mid and low tariff unis, and the growth rate for clearing placements was the second lowest on record, indicating a decline in the number of students choosing to apply through this process. Several factors contributed to this trend, including increased student switching, faster confirmations, and weaker post-results numbers among older UK students and lower tariff staff providers. And with Russell Group institutions active in clearing, the competitive landscape became more competitive than ever before, with students entering the buyer's market for their preferred study destination. So it was yet again another disrupted, changing clearing, but for those armed with insights and data, the correct advertising infrastructure, on-point assistive content, and being in market early, a challenging cycle was met head-on with the best possible outcomes. And now I'm going to pass over to Barbs to take us through the National Clearing Survey this year.
Okay, there's a lot to get through this morning, everybody. So if I start to rattle on too quickly, if one of my Net Natives colleagues could tell me to slow down a little bit, but I just want to make sure that we get through all of the content. So here is the NCS in numbers. We had a really bumper year, was getting on for 5,500 responses. We had 58 partners and 131 universities were represented in answers. 3 in 5 were post 92, 1 in 3 Russell Group, and the remainder were established universities with a few really exciting specialists in the mix. And over the course of our 10 years running the NCS, we've accumulated over 5 million data points to share with you. And here are the demographics from the survey. As usual, with nearly any survey, we had a bit of a female skew. We had a slightly older sample than in previous years. 48% of our sample were first in their family to go to university, and 32% were from a low participation neighbourhood. So a really big well done to your WP and outreach teams. 20% of our sample are originally from a country outside of the UK, although this doesn't necessarily mean that they'll be paying international fees, unfortunately. When we compared this against the UCAS 28 days post-clearing data, we were pleasantly surprised that our sample only varies by a few percent on the metrics that we were able to directly compare with UCAS. So some of you are already pretty familiar with our clearing segments, but we've switched these up this year to be more representative of the market. We used to have 4, but these have now been condensed down to 3. So we have the traditional clearing student, the largest group, and these are the people who did not secure one of their original UCAS choices or got lower than expected grades. The direct applicant. So this group apply for the first time to university through the clearing process. They're often older and the hardest to track and measure. And finally, the new one, the change maker. So this profile is all about taking an active choice to make a difference. They've gone through the traditional process originally to apply to university, but they're now using clearing to better their options. So let's now go segment by segment, and I'll share some insights on them. I'll start with the traditional student, and I'm going to spend a little bit longer on this profile and then point out key differences from the other profiles as we go along. The traditional student is still the biggest group at 40% of the sample, but this has reduced after a really big year for them last year. As a segment, they tend to be younger with a really traditional UG age of 18 and to have the lowest average UCAS points at 106. They're most likely to be home students. And when it comes to the type of institutions that they go for, they have the most even split, with 41% going to a post-92 and just under a third going to an established other institution and just under a third going to a Russell Group. And interestingly, despite having the lowest average UCAS points, they're the most likely to go Russell Group. They have the most negative emotions of all the segments, and that's driven by them being forced into clearing and not having the results that they were expecting or hoping for. They all go through clearing due to either having achieving lower grades or not receiving offers when originally applied. And as a result of this, they're also likely to change their mind on the course. So our next group is the direct students. On average, they're older at 24, so definitely really into that mature student category, and therefore will have had a gap in education. They're extremely likely to go to a post-92, with over 2/3 securing a place at this mission type, and the most unlikely of all to go to a Russell Group, despite having a very slightly higher average UCAS points than the traditional student. They're happier to go through the process. And you can see here that 2 out of 3 of their emotions are positive. And they chose to go to university direct through clearing, with the top 3 reasons being due to them only just deciding to apply, not feeling ready earlier, or due to a change in their personal circumstances. And our final segment is the change maker. They're the smaller group, but still a good size, with 28% of our sample. They have the highest average UCAS points at 120, so quite a big difference between the 106 and 107 of our other segments. They're predominantly happy to go through the clearing process, and their top reasons are changing their mind on course, on location, or the institution. So they're going through clearing to get a better option for them in their current circumstances. And a quick look at how this has changed over time. So we can see that the direct and change maker, with a few ups and downs, have increased in size. And this year, the traditional student dropped back down after that big bumper year in 2023. We're going to be referencing these segments throughout this presentation. So now hopefully you've got a good understanding of the profiles. So we've got 3 really key findings to share with you today. Key finding 1, fees, funding and stress, which is always an issue. But rather than more doom and gloom, we're going to talk about how you can pivot this to be a good opportunity for you and to help students. So cost of tuition is continuing to rise as a barrier. And we must remember that the survey was conducted after the changes to interest rates charged to student loans, but prior to those fee increases announced late last year. And even though we all know that the fee increases are small and perhaps not even enough to sustain the sector, it's going to be really interesting to see how this news changes people's perceptions in this coming year, and definitely something to keep an eye on. Cost of living concerns, thankfully, look to be levelling off, but there's still a barrier to more than half of our students. So definitely something that we need to continue to communicate about. And this year we asked what was the most difficult or confusing part of the process. And of those other free text responses where people get really specific, 1 in 5 were related to fees, securing funding, moving to student finance over. Overall, 1 in 4 looked at information on student finance or financing support when researching clearing prior to results day, but this rises for some profiles, and for direct students, it was 40%. And as we know, this group is often older, financial factors may be more paramount to them. I'm assuming they're less likely to rely on the bank of mum and dad, and they may also have dependents themselves. And then when it comes to decision making for course factors, we see that a lot of factors are quite closely related, and cost, fundings and scholarships are not the most important factors by any means, but they are almost as important as your lecturers. And these finance related factors are becoming more important year on year. And again, they're more important for direct students than any other group. So as we've been reading about financial incentives being offered, we'd love to get your input on this. It's all anonymous. Did you offer any financial incentives this year to your clearing applicants? We'll leave this for a couple of minutes for some responses to come through. Rich, were you offered anything to go to university?
Yeah, I'm not going to reveal the institution I went to. I don't think it exists anymore, but I was offered a popcorn machine if I enrolled by a certain date. So that was like an incentive to sign up. And I think I had that popcorn machine for about 5 years, so I've got plenty of good use out of it. How about you?
No, just the gift of knowledge was enough for me, Rich.
I will say it wasn't a deciding factor, but it did make me turn up on the week I was supposed to.
Okay, so we've got 16% people have answered, have said yes, they did offer financial incentives, and 84% no. So not becoming that widespread yet among the people here today. Okay, so thanks for answering that. And now for the opportunity. So for the first time this year, we asked what type of information students are most likely to be willing to share their contact details with you for. And the clear winner is finance and funding information. So can you leverage being a trusted advisor with lots of lovely resources in order to be able to stay in touch? So let's sum up key finding 1. Both tuition and living costs are a major barrier, and more these are becoming an important decision-making factor, with some groups more affected and therefore much more thoughtful about these factors. But these barriers and the need for information can present an opportunity. So Rich, how can we best leverage these findings to help students and our marketing and recruitment efforts?
Yeah, I thought thanks for that key finding, Barbs. I thought that was presents a really nice opportunity because we know that students want more assistive content from their institutions, and despite finance and fees and scholarship concerns being high on the agenda for the last few years, if not forever, sometimes that can still be tucked away. So it's about bringing that information forward at the kind of time that students are looking for it. Perhaps leverage some of your thought leaders and lecturers at the institution to kind of explain what that means for them. Perhaps you could do some online live events like this one where people are happy to share their contact details, which can then be used for your advertising. And I think, yeah, I think those two kind of needs are really nice for an institution. A student needs support and financial information. They're willing to give you their contact details for it. So what kind of value exchange can you create that makes that valuable?
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to key finding 2. So our second finding is all about planning, preparation, and therefore improved performance by the students and the control that students are able to have in the clearing process. So what do we mean by this? Well, when it comes to planning, this year we saw more students conducting clearing research prior to results day, 6 percentage points up from last year, and that's up to 2/3 of our sample. And not only are we seeing more people conduct research, but the percentage of those conducting it early is also increasing. This year we saw 30% starting in or before June, up from 27% last year and 23% in 2022. So we can see here that these small increases every year, over a few years, it's a lot more people planning early. But what is this additional research translating into? Well, we asked how many institutions everyone contacted when trying to secure a clearing place. Here we can see that this is reducing year on year, with students contacting an average of 2.29 institutions this year, down from 2.81 back in 2019. And we also see the number of single-minded audiences, so these are those that only ever contact one institution, has gone up by 4% since 2023. And this demonstrates people knowing who they want to contact and just being a lot more concise with their choices. And we wanted to see if this was true for all profiles. So we broke out this question by our different segments to see if all audiences are experiencing the same reduction. And although the traditional student is seeing the greatest decline, all audiences are contacting fewer now than they have in most previous years. And then this got us thinking and playing around with our data. How many institutions do students need to contact on average to receive one clearing offer? We note that back in 2019, students were contacting an average of 1.49 institutions to receive one clearing offer, and we saw this reduce over time, especially in the COVID years. Now it's slightly increasing, but it's still lower at 1.39 than prior to COVID. And by segment, we note that direct students contact the fewest to receive one offer and traditional the most. So it's back over to the group now. And we'd love to know, in your opinion, do you feel that it's getting easier to secure a place via clearing? We'll just give it another minute or so. Okay, so quite a big majority there, easier, 87%. 2% think it's getting harder, and 11% the same. We also found that this year fewer clearing students were accepting their first offer compared to last year, from 42% down to 38%. And this was seen across all of our profiles. All profiles have seen that decrease. Traditional down to 32% from 38%. Direct students 44% down from 46%. And the change maker 44% down from 49%. And we wanted to understand what's driving this decision. And after categorizing all those lovely free text responses around why students didn't accept their first offer, we found it was mostly due to waiting for a better offer. For example, a different location, a different course. They didn't want to accept a foundation year. So showing that it was in their control and students are aiming to get the best results for them and not rush into a choice. So to sum up key finding 2, your pre-clearing marketing information and brand campaigns are becoming even more important. And we've seen this through students doing more research prior to results day, students being more precise with who they contact, and this is translating into them contacting fewer universities. And finally, students are happy to receive offers, but they're not going to be pushed into accepting their first offer if they think that they might be able to get something better. So over to lovely colleagues.
Thanks, Barbs. Yeah, great. I feel like we say this to everyone and anyone, but it's more important than ever, which is making sure that your clearing plans are starting earlier and earlier every year. It's so important. Students are searching earlier and earlier every year. They're more savvy. They're more aware of what they can do in clearing and the active choices that they have. Um, and that preparation leads to fewer institutions on their shortlist. So it's super important to be in market early. And if you haven't been working with your agency partner or haven't started your in-house plans around what your media plans look like across this period, what your enrollment and conversion plans are, then you know it really is time to start working on that. And Connor, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, not only, is that super relevant for the student journey and that longer tail journey, but also tactically from an advertising perspective, having those ads live earlier or having your broader ads earlier, getting those data signals flowing through the platform is just one of the techniques to make your advertising more cost efficient in, that immediate lead up to results day itself, and post results day. So, ourselves, our platform partners can't stress enough about having these ads live and in market, making sure that the platforms are set up and all those signals are flowing through ahead of time, and you're not surprising the platforms with very late advertising reaching a huge audience, because the platforms will be very confused, and when the platforms are confused, costs go up, and that's not what we want when we have tighter budgets.
Okay, I'll crack on with our final finding for today. So here we have the Venn of where. Where are students active? Where do they engage with your brand? And where do they find information that they trust? So on average, prospects are using around 6 different information sources. And when we look at individual information sources, there are no massive surprises with UCAS, Google, and your websites coming up top. But when we explore by source type, we can see that, yes, those education-specific resources are important, but so are experiential and opinion sources. It all comes back to building that full picture of using multiple sources as students do more and more research in the lead up to clearing to get a really overall holistic view of you. And then let's have a very quick look at emergent trends for clearing research. Almost 1 in 10 are turning to AI for information now. But as we know, all sources are not equal in students' minds, and everybody now is being a lot more savvy about who to trust and who not to trust, and the value they place on individual sources. And AI is the least trusted source of information. The great news for you is that your websites are the second most trusted source of information, equal with people that prospects actually know. And your official social media accounts are also seen as really trustworthy as well. Now onto social media channels. When we look at general social media use rather than sources used in clearing, we don't see any change in which platforms are preferred, with Insta, TikTok and Snapchat retaining their top 3 places on the podium. However, surprisingly, we've seen a reduction in daily use across the board. We initially thought this might be due to our slightly older sample this year, but we're seeing the pattern in younger age groups as well. As I said, it was surprising to us and something that we all want to keep an eye on. We see the mature young divide when we look at specific platforms by age. And we see higher daily use across the board by those typical clearing customers aged 17 to 20, with the only outliers being Facebook, X and LinkedIn. the biggest reductions between our 2023 and 2024 surveys were for Be Real, which previously grew really, really quickly, but it looks like potentially the novelty might have worn off, and X, which has been mired in controversy. Blue Sky started gaining traction since the survey closed, so we weren't including it this year. And it remains to be seen whether, again, it's a bit of a novelty, as I remember we were all talking about Threads a year ago, or is it going to develop into a really brand safe replacement for X? And now for our final poll today. Does your university have an official Blue Sky and or X account? I haven't jumped onto Blue Sky yet. Have any of you natives?
No, I keep meaning to, and I was reading it's a really sort of positive way you can have an influence on things if you drag a couple of friends over there. I'm firmly in the 21 plus. I'm a daily user of Facebook, LinkedIn, and X.
I'm always a downloader of the new app to look at the advertising potential, but personally, fewer apps for me is better.
Okay, so just 13% of the people joining us today don't use either. 69% are only use X. Nobody is only using Blue Sky, and 18% are on both. Okay, so social media obviously is in everything. And when we look at other media types, TV and music streaming come out top for all, but more young students are using them. In fact, the order of use is the same for all groups throughout young and mature, but we do see older students engaging more with some of the overall lesser used media options, such as newspapers, radio, that kind of thing. So to sum up key finding 3, official sources are the most trusted, but prospects are seeking clearing information everywhere. Social media use might be changing. So whilst it's important to test and invest in new platforms, it's also really important to keep a presence on old favorites and to use other types of media to get your message across. And I'm sure my colleagues have got lots to say about this.
Yeah, absolutely. With the adoption of those new platforms, it's always great to lock in your handle nice and early before someone else steals the handle that you want. That is one thing that I tend to do with these new platforms. I did also see a good question in the chat on insights on Reddit and Discord. Discord, not so much. Personally, I feel there's some really great organic strategies across the Discord platform. I will have a look through some of our other research. I might be able to follow up on Discord, but platforms such as Reddit, absolutely. I like to refer to these as underutilized media. Underutilized because they're not new. They're not new to the advertising realm, but they tend to be new to the education space, and partly due to budgets, not spreading budgets too thin. We are not advocates at Net Natives of spreading ourselves across too many channels. It really is about taking a very tactical approach to audiences and generating sufficient audience for those cost efficiencies so we can actually have enough data signals to display true ROI of the advertising. But onto those underutilized channels that Bubs was just talking about there, that audio space, that CTV, really reaching in those locked in audiences when they are really attentive to the media that they are consuming at the time. They are some of the key channels we are using right now to lock in that attention right at the start and build those audiences ready to support platforms such as Google Ads, Meta Ads, LinkedIn, as Rich was mentioning. How about you, Rich?
Sorry, I couldn't find how to turn my microphone on then. That was like going back in time when we all worked remotely. Yeah, I would just echo what Connor said, really. just being very, very sort of strategic about which media platforms your media plan includes, but also to consider those underutilized platforms that perhaps your audience are at, and where you can reach them, and where you can get efficiencies in the spends that you have. And you know, come and talk to us about it. You know, me and Connor love talking about these things. If you're a partner or you're not, please do reach out and talk to us as a sort of media experts. We'd love to talk about what we're doing, and we're also going to be running a content series throughout the next sort of 3 or 4 months on underutilized media, and running more webinars, and publishing some blogs around um, I guess kind of a deep dive into some of these platforms that could be options for you. We've got one coming up on audio and podcasts, and we're going to be doing a live event with Spotify. So that's going to be in the next coming few weeks. And we're going to follow up again with an event on CTV with our partners at Disney. Looking at programmatic and how you can utilize that as an institution. It's a really sort of super important channel to include. I'm sure Connor will agree.
Yeah, absolutely. And all of those there that we've been talking about in that series, really it's down to the tactical of how can we leverage these for additional data sources to be growing that audience nice and early to support us through the clearing period, in particular results day, but now also post results day, where it's highly competitive. And those change maker audiences you mentioned, Barb, are hot on it during that time.
Okay, so now for our final sum up. So costs are the biggest barrier and a course factor which is increasing in importance. Students on the whole are hesitant to share their data, but they do see the value in sharing it for information on fees and funding, making this a key area for you to invest in for data exchange. Students are coming into clearing more prepared, with more conducting research, and this is translating into students on average contacting fewer universities. So this really, really highlights the importance of pre-clearing activity. And students are present across multiple platforms. These are changing year on year. Staying up to date with where students are, engaging with new platforms, and applying best practice to existing ones could really, really be a winning formula. Shall we answer some of the questions that have been sent in?
Yeah, sure. Okay. Let's have a look. Look at us on time. Isn't that good? Okay, so there's a few that have popped up on the chat. So if you haven't popped your questions on there yet and you've got one to ask us, you can. And then we've had a few sent in directly. So I'll ask the team that now. Excuse me 1 minute. Okay, so the first question is from our friends at Leeds Trinity University. How can low to mid-tariff institutions prepare for clearing in light of the challenge in clearing 2024 and tight budgets?
Touched on lots of these points throughout, so there's been fair few notes to be making on this topic already, but it's been really specific with your goals and not spreading yourselves too thin. Now, the advertising channels, I'm talking very tactically here, from advertising delivery perspective, but those channels just aren't set up for the education landscape. They're set up for e-commerce, they're set up for shopping ads, and more of the betas that are coming through now are for that, those sectors as well, which is why we are also utilizing that underutilized media. We've got Snapchat coming to us with some groundbreaking lead gen ads. So we're going to be up in London at Snapchat next week going into those. But it's been really specific and not spreading ourselves too thin, because we simply can't. We have to be very tactical and really grow those audiences to support the platforms ahead of time. It's super important to be doing that. It's all about finding out those cost efficiencies, and some of the ways that we can be doing that is, optimizing first party data. I'm sure that won't be news to anyone, but it really is about using that first party data. How we can be one step further, very tactical ones with first party data, is using it for negatives and exclusions. That's a really great technique with tighter budgets to make sure you're not just building audiences to include, you are purposefully building your robust audiences to exclude. That is one of the fundamental ways we can really find cost efficiencies with our advertising. It's about wowing your audience with fantastic creative. As these channels and platforms are getting rid of more and more of their ready to go demographic targeting options, all of these ways that historically made ads very, very good, ads are just getting more and more expensive. And it really is that creative-led advertising approaches that are really supporting us to build audiences. Ways that we're doing that, it's by using video advertising. You're building an audience when a viewer watches a fantastic creative, they watch it to 95% plus, you've got a new audience stream there, a new signal. So, making sure you're also using creative, and also your website, making sure your website is your key asset. Barbs, you mentioned earlier that it's that trusted source of information. For me, for advertising delivery, it's also that tactical resource to support cost efficiencies, making sure your website, your campaign landing pages, which is a separate discussion, which is better to use, but is really super relevant to your advertising, because there are lots of variables, but a super great website will also support really refining your ad delivery to be cost efficient. And as I say, there is no secret sauce when you have a tighter budget to be able to do everything. It is about not spreading yourself too thin, but putting those tactical plays in nice and early to build audiences and be nice and cost effective.
Yeah, I'd like to jump in as well, and say that it is a crowded market. So anything that you can do to stand out in this crowded market. And I think that also goes back to just really understanding your audience, your brand, perceptions of your brand, and also perceptions of your competitors and where those fall in your audience's eyes, just to really make sure that your messaging is cutting through and standing out.
Brilliant. Thanks, guys. Connor, one that's coming over the chat, so catch you on the hop there. But there's one around emails and how important they are. I know we've spoken about that as a important and sometimes underutilized channel. I wonder if you might be able to take that one.
Yeah, definitely. I was just reading this question myself, so thanks, Gemma, for this really good question. On the email piece, and do students want emails around clearing, and which content? Something that I find very interesting to do around the clearing periods, and you can do retrospectively. So I would recommend, content teams and those looking at messaging or messaging reviews do this. Most all ad channels have an ad library. TikTok is a fantastic one for this purpose, because it gives you real robust insights. You can go into the ad library and have a look at what others were doing around that period of time, particularly for messaging. And what was really interesting last year and the year before were the comments under different types of messaging for offering clearing information. Without going into detail about exactly what they were, just reading the comments on the videos, which is why I say TikTok is really good for that, because they also give you the comments to those videos too. You can really just see how that content is being engaged with by the audience. And there are stark differences between ads or information being shared with them very specific to this is what to expect, or this is how we as an institution would support you through the process. There's also a big difference in comments and engagement and digestion of the information from the audience when it's user-generated content or employee-generated content, as opposed to static image, carousel image if it's on TikTok, or more traditional advertising style videos. So I would say, with email, it's really about what is being said. It's about capturing that audience's attention and pivoting that content in the right way. Those principles across all channels around clearing. But yes, I still think email holds a strong spot in supporting us. And as I mentioned before, another audience opportunity, whether that's exclusion audiences or inclusion audiences. It's one way where we can support building up those advertising channels.
Brilliant. Thank you. And I think we've probably got time for one very quick final one, which is let's go for how early should a university start targeting potential clearing students to raise awareness of their brand? Usually our activity doesn't start until clearing opens. Should I be doing this earlier?
I would say yes, yes, yes. And I think we covered that today in the presentation. And then our main report, which people will receive shortly, that kind of breaks down the research timeline. And 12% of people were researching even the year before they were going into clearing. So, there had been like prior to January 2024. So really, really early in the cycle. And then it ramps up in sort of the very early spring. And then there's a bit of a drop off and then a big increase again. So yes, early, early, early.
Yeah,
Hey,
absolutely. I echo that entirely. Not only for the student journey, but also, as I mentioned a few times today, tactically for the ad channels too.
And also with early clearing, that's obviously a really big opportunity for direct students if they know about it, and international students who are not kind of set to the same exam result schedule.
brilliant. Thank you. Okay, for everyone that's still on with us, thank you so much. We're in the final straight now. So we did have quite a few more questions come through, but we're gonna pause it there for questions in the interest of time. But we will get back to everybody. A lot of these questions around channels and which ones are underutilized or opportunities, we're going to be tackling in our blog series and webinars. But please do sort of message us directly if something comes up and you're interested. We'd love to hear from you. And Barbs, do you mind popping on to the next slide and we'll finish up? So what are the next steps for you? So as Barb's has alluded to, this is just like scratching the surface of the National Clearance Survey. There's a whole heap of information and data and insights for you. After this recording, we'll be sending out the slides, but we're also going to be sending you the main report, which is a written report covering a few more key findings, a little bit of a deeper dive, and something to sort of share with you and your teams to just keep those real sort of top headline findings front of mind. But the real magic of the National Clearance Survey is that we open up all the insights and data for you, which we share on dashboards, which are homed within our partner hub, Akiro. And if you log into your Akiro account, you'll be able to see all of the findings this year, benchmarked and segmented for your the clearing profiles year on year from our last reports that have been uploaded. And there's just all sorts of really super interesting ways to cut and chop that data for your insights and to inform your strategies. So my colleague will be sending that along with the recording out after this event. And then the other piece that I wanted to speak to you on was Barb's mentioned about an opportunity to better understand your audience and their perceptions of your uni, which really is invaluable, not just through clearing, but also for all your activity, really, everything that you're hoping to do and to measure and track your brand and what levers you need to pull to improve your brand perceptions and your brand health against your competitor set. And we're really excited to be running this project. It's a new project. We launched it at the end of last year. We've got quite a few people and partners signed up to it already, which I can see in the chat channel that they're at this event. So that's great. But we want to work with as many universities and institutions as possible to track their brand and to see how we can help or how you can help improve your brand over time. So it's a new subscription service from Net Natives, and we'd really like to speak to as many of you as possible on that. And again, we'll send out some information about how you can find out more about tracking and managing your brand. And I think, thank you so much, but we are amazingly exactly on time with where we wanted to be. So I wanted to give a huge thank you to Connor, who's actually dialed in from New York this morning at 5 in the morning to do this webinar. Sorry, Connor, for scheduling a UK webinar while you're in New York.
That's no trouble at all.
And Barb's who's our amazing global research lead who's led on this project and brought all these amazing insights, and we're really excited to see them in the wild helping institutions of all shapes and sizes. And a big thank you to our partners. Without you, it wouldn't be possible. We had over 60 institutions partnering with us this year, which really does help. So we would love all part institutions who are active in clearing to partner with us on the next National Clearing Survey. It's free to be a partner, and it really does help the better your institution's understanding of what you can and should be doing in clearing, but also it helps the digital journey of your students and helps make their lives easier, which we all, that's why we're all here. So final word from me, big thank you, and keep your eyes out on your email and have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.